He lay on a cold, unforgiving sidewalk, eyes dimming by the second. Yet just as he was ready to surrender, a small hand touched his matted fur. How could one little girl's compassion spark a miracle in a dog who had already lost all hope? On the edge of a bustling city, where rusted fences lined abandoned lots, an emaciated dog trembled in the shadows. His coat was ragged, ribs glaringly visible, and his eyes, a silent plea to an indifferent world, had lost their spark. Locals hurried by, dismissing him as a fixture of urban decay. Yet fate intervened one chilly afternoon when Lily, an 8-year-old with a curious spirit, strolled down the deserted alley in search of adventure. Spotting the pitiable creature quivering near a dented trash bin, her heart clenched with empathy. Ignoring the pungent smells and the city's indifference, she inched closer, offering a piece of her sandwich. In his final moments of despair, the dog sensed a sliver of gentleness radiating from Lily's bright eyes. A subtle wag of his tail, almost imperceptible, signaled that some part of him still longed to believe in kindness. Thus began a tale that would reverberate through the neighborhood, challenging notions of compassion and second chances. Lily, with her untarnished optimism, saw not a dying stray, but a life worth saving. The dog, though barely clinging to existence, felt the faint warmth of human care for the first time in what seemed an eternity. Their story, forged in a forgotten alley, would grow far beyond its humble beginnings. From skeptical parents to watchful neighbors, from a struggling veterinarian clinic to a community caught between cynicism and hope, everyone would soon be drawn into this unfolding drama. Step by step, an unlikely bond would form, pushing them toward a moment so transformative it would be hailed as a miracle. Through heartbreak and perseverance, Lily and the dog would show that even in the bleakest circumstances, a single spark of compassion can reignite a soul on the brink of giving up. Lily couldn't shake the image of that trembling dog from her mind. Small for her age but brimming with resolve, she sneaked out of her family's modest apartment at dawn, clutching leftover chicken wrapped in foil. Her parents, focused on their own morning routines, barely noticed her absence, until, of course, she came home late for breakfast with muddy shoes and a guilty look. Each day, Lily tiptoed back to the deserted alley, scanning the perimeter for the lonely creature she'd found slumped against the cold pavement. The dog, wary and exhausted, slunk away at first, uncertain whether Lily posed a threat, but desperation trumped fear. When she laid out scraps of meat and whispered soothing words, he hesitantly crept forward. With every careful bite, his eyes flickered, reflecting a cautious gratitude. Lily named him Rusty for the patch of reddish fur still clinging to his haunches, a remnant of healthier days. Day after day, her kindness chipped away at his guarded heart, forging a fragile link between a neglected animal and a child who refused to ignore suffering. At home, Lily's parents, her father, a gruff taxi driver working long shifts, and her mother, juggling multiple part-time jobs, sensed her distraction. Dinners grew tense when Lily let slip her concern for a starving dog. Worries about finances, potential vet bills, and the risks of disease made them balk at the idea of bringing in a stray. Still, Lily persisted. Her mother, noticing the fervent light in her daughter's eyes, began softening. One afternoon, after Lily tearfully described Rusty's pitiful condition, her mother agreed to a simple look, nothing more. Seeing Rusty with her own eyes was a shock. His coat was ragged, sores visible across his legs. He trembled violently when Lily's mother approached. Yet, as Lily gently stroked him, her mother saw a flicker of Rusty's spirit, a small desperate hope shining through. Moved by pity and her daughter's earnest pleas, she offered a compromise. They would try to get him basic medical help. If he could be nursed back to health, they'd explore finding him a permanent home. Securing medical attention wasn't straightforward. The local vet clinic, overcrowded with cases from underfunded shelters, had limited spots. Lily's mother, faced with vet fees, found her anxiety mounting. Even so, Lily wouldn't budge. With a fierce resolve belying her years, she promised to help however she could. Cleaning dishes, walking the dog daily, even offering to give up her birthday gifts if it meant saving Rusty. Touched by her devotion, her mother scheduled an appointment for a basic health check. When the day arrived, Lily coaxed Rusty into an old blanket and carefully guided him into their battered car. The dog cowered in the back seat, ears flat, eyes darting at every new sound. Lily's mother drove with knuckles white on the steering wheel, uncertain if she was making a reckless choice or living up to the compassion she hoped to instill in her child. At the clinic, the veterinarian, a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Fielding, took one look at Rusty's gaunt figure and shook her head. "He's severely malnourished and suffering from multiple infections," she explained gently. "His chances, well, it'll take significant care and resources to pull him through." A hush fell over the exam room. Lily, clutching Rusty's paw, stared at Dr. Fielding with tears brimming. The mother, swallowing her doubts, asked about the potential cost. "Doctor." Fielding hesitated, then offered a slim smile. "We can do a payment plan and I'll reach out to a rescue group for possible sponsorship. He deserves a chance, doesn't he?" Relief coursed through Lily's veins like a warm tide. Meanwhile, her mother exhaled heavily, torn between financial strain and the impossibility of letting Rusty die when hope was so close at hand. That night, Lily's mother recounted the visit to her father over a tense dinner. Initially, he grew agitated at the looming vet bills. But as Lily quietly showed him a photo of Rusty's hollow eyes, he relented. "We'll figure something out," he sighed. Lily's face lit up. Her family was bending, ever so slightly, toward empathy over practicality. In the cramped bedroom she shared with her little brother, Lily sat on the floor, thinking of the promise she'd made to Rusty through every piece of food and every gentle pat on his head, that she wouldn't abandon him the way the world had. She resolved to do whatever it took, fundraise by selling handmade crafts at school, ask neighbors for help, anything to give the battered dog a second chance. Outside, the city lights glowed indifferently, but Lily's small act of care was setting off ripples that no one had yet fully grasped. Thus, the stage was set for a journey that would test not only Lily's compassion, but her family's capacity to embrace an unexpected miracle. In that first step, accepting Rusty into their care, they also opened the door to challenges that would reveal deeper truths about responsibility, resilience, and the extraordinary power a child can wield when guided by pure, unyielding love. Over the next few weeks, Lily's days became a whirlwind of caring for Rusty. Before the morning rush to school, she'd place gentle pats on his head, ensuring he ate the vet-prescribed meal. After class, she'd rush home, excited to check on his recovery. His kennel, a small corner sectioned off in their already tight living room, transformed into a center of hope. Under Lily's watchful eye, Rusty's coat grew less patchy, his eyes less haunted by pain. Although his ribs still showed, he no longer cowered at every sudden noise. Yet, despite the glimmers of progress, the family's daily life strained under the weight of this new responsibility. Bills from Dr. Fielding's clinic began arriving in the mail, stacking up on the kitchen counter. Lily's mother, though touched by her daughter's unwavering devotion, grew anxious. Conversations once held in soft murmurs escalated into tense debates. The father, weary from night shifts, feared he couldn't shoulder the mounting costs. Guilt gnawed at him whenever he saw Rusty's timid smile, a reminder that turning him away would have been a death sentence. To help offset expenses, Lily launched an impromptu fundraising campaign. With her mother's reluctant blessing, she set up a small stand at a weekend flea market, selling hand-drawn bookmarks and homemade crafts. Neighbors and passers-by, intrigued by the heartfelt cause, donated spare change. Some recognized Lily from the local supermarket, or from the times she'd walked around asking about lost pets, and they pitched in a few extra coins. While the money raised was modest, it symbolized a communal empathy for Rusty's plight. Each small contribution helped lighten the burden. However, a new challenge emerged. Rusty's emotional scars ran deeper than anyone had guessed. At night, he whimpered in his sleep, occasionally waking the household with mournful howls that spoke of nightmares from a past of neglect. Lily's parents exchanged worried glances in the hallway, unsure if this haunting sorrow could ever truly be healed. On more than one occasion, Lily's mother questioned whether taking Rusty in had been too great a leap. Yet each time she peeked into Lily's room to see her daughter curled up beside the dog, softly reading him stories about brave adventurers and loyal friends, her doubts would wane. Their apartment building, typically a place of hurried hellos and polite indifference, started to buzz with rumors of the rescue dog in 2B. A few residents, particularly an elderly couple on the second floor, raised concerns about noise and potential health risks. Yet, others rallied around Lily's family, offering leftover blankets and occasionally sliding small donations under their door. "It's sweet what you're doing," wrote a neighbor in a note. "In a world that often overlooks suffering, you remind us that kindness still exists." Amid these subtle shifts, Lily took Rusty for gentle walks around the block, staying clear of busy roads and loud intersections. His reaction to larger dogs or sudden movements revealed a dog still grappling with fear and learned helplessness. Sometimes, Lily glimpsed a flash of terror in his eyes, as if he anticipated an invisible hand raised to strike. Patiently, she'd kneel down, coaxing him forward with gentle whispers. Gradually, he inched closer, guided by the trust that Lily was determined to earn. One afternoon, on a particularly quiet walk, Lily encountered a middle-aged man wearing a concerned expression. He approached them, asking if this dog matched the description of one he'd seen posted online, something about a missing pit mix. Lily politely explained that she had no record of Rusty's past, and the man left, though a hint of recognition flickered in his eyes. That evening, Lily mentioned the encounter to her parents. They shared unsettled glances, haunted by the question, what if Rusty's previous owner, someone who'd neglected or abandoned him, were seeking him out, or worse, determined to reclaim him? Despite these unsettling possibilities, small victories continued to surface. With each vet checkup, Dr. Fielding praised Rusty's recovery. His infections gradually healed. His coat, though still patchy, began to show healthier patches of fur. His gait grew steadier. Touched by Lily's devotion, Dr. Fielding offered discounted follow-up treatments and introduced them to a volunteer from a local rescue who specialized in rehabilitating trauma-stricken dogs. "He's come a long way," Dr. Fielding said kindly, "but the road ahead still has bumps. Healing an emotional wound can be even harder than tending physical scars." Lily's father, initially aloof, found himself bonding with Rusty in quieter moments. After returning late from work, he'd discover the dog waiting with tentative tail wags, an unspoken question in his eyes. "Is it safe to trust you?" Over time, the father responded with cautious pats, then eventually warm rubs behind the ears. In those subtle gestures, father and dog both felt a sense of acceptance they'd each been missing, one from a world that demanded constant sacrifice, the other from an existence marred by rejection. Yet, a growing sense of foreboding trailed these acts of compassion. Sometimes, Lily or her parents noticed a parked car across the street that seemed to linger too long, or a stranger glancing intently at Rusty from afar. They couldn't be sure if these incidents were harmless coincidences or hints of a lurking threat. After all, the note pinned to their door and the memory of that suspicious break-in still lingered like a dark cloud. As Lily's mother confided to her husband one evening, "It feels like we're fighting an invisible enemy. I can't shake the feeling that something else is coming." Against this backdrop of mounting anxiety, Lily stood firm. Drawing strength from Rusty's improving health, she resolved that no matter what obstacles arose, she would protect him. Even if hidden dangers crept closer, she believed the same unwavering spirit that saved Rusty from despair could guard them against whatever darkness loomed. For in the tender moments they shared, child and dog, both discovering courage they never knew they possessed, hope flickered like a guiding light, ready to outshine any threat that dared to extinguish it. The tension around Rusty's presence in Lily's family home continued to mount, but it was only a prelude to the startling revelation that would shake them all. One chilly Saturday morning, with the faint winter sun painting the sky pale yellow, Lily and her parents set out for another follow-up visit to Dr. Fielding's clinic. Rusty, still cautious but steadily gaining confidence, followed Lily onto the frayed back seat of their compact car. At the clinic, the waiting room was abuzz with pet owners, some cradling kittens, others restraining lively puppies. In stark contrast, Rusty lay at Lily's feet, subdued and trembling. as if each new environment reminded him of past traumas he couldn't quite forget. Dr. Fielding, a middle-aged vet whose kindness had touched Lily's heart, led them into an exam room. After a thorough check of Rusty's temperature, weight and healing wounds, she nodded with guarded optimism. "He's making progress," she said, offering Lily a gentle smile. "His nutritional levels are climbing and the infections are almost gone. But we still need to address his anxiety and unravel what might be fueling his constant state of alert." Lily's mother exhaled, relieved but clearly still on edge. Paying for these treatments drained their tight budget, yet they persisted, driven by Lily's unyielding devotion to saving this dog. Just as the family prepared to leave, Dr. Fielding hesitated, glancing at a file on her desk. "There's something I should share," she said, her tone shifting. "I requested a scan on Rusty's chipped collar after you brought him in. Even though the collar was damaged, part of the embedded microchip data remained. I managed to retrieve some partial registration records." Lily's father, brow knitted, asked quietly, "What did you find?" Dr. Fielding flipped through the worn pages of the record. The data indicates that Rusty might have belonged to a small breeding operation. The name is incomplete, something like Greenway Kennels, but the partial address doesn't match any official licensed facility in this region. I suspect it could be an unregistered or illegal breeding outfit. A hush fell over the room, the only sound the rustle of Dr. Fielding's papers. Lily, wide-eyed, reached for Rusty's collar as if the clue might be etched there in invisible ink. Her parents exchanged grim looks, recalling the ominous note pinned to their door. Could this be the reason behind the threats? Had they unknowingly rescued a dog tied to a secret ring of exploitation? "It gets more concerning," Dr. Fielding continued, lowering her voice. "I've heard rumors of a group operating in the outskirts, some breeding dogs for unscrupulous purposes, possibly even dog fighting. Many of the strays that turn up in local shelters come from suspicious backgrounds. If Rusty was part of such a network, his abandonment might have been deliberate once he was deemed useless or injured. And if those individuals realize he survived, well, they might want him back for reasons that aren't compassionate." Lily's mother pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, remembering the break-in and the menacing photograph. A chill ran through Lily's father as he realized the potential danger lurking in the shadows. Leaving the clinic under a blanket of worry, they drove home in tense silence. Rusty dozed in the back, oblivious to the gravity of the news. Lily stroked his thin coat and whispered comforting words, her young mind struggling to grasp the idea that someone could harm an innocent creature for profit or sport. Back at their apartment, an uneasy quiet settled over the family. They gathered around the small kitchen table, Lily still gently clasping Rusty's paw, as her father recounted Dr. Fielding's findings and the probable link to a clandestine operation. He took a steadying breath before speaking. "We have to be ready for the possibility that the people who once exploited him will try to reclaim him, or silence anyone who shelters him. This isn't just about saving one dog anymore. We might be up against a larger group who doesn't care about laws or compassion." Lily's mother rubbed her temple, exhaustion etched into her features. "We can't fight criminals, can we? Our priority has to be Lily's safety, and our own." Tears brimming in Lily's eyes, she interjected softly, "But if we give up on Rusty now, who else will care for him? We can't just hand him back to those people. That would be condemning him." Her words struck a chord in both her parents, a reminder that while they were fearful, they had also come too far to turn back. In a quiet moment of solidarity, they realized their family had become Rusty's last refuge. Abandoning him to the unknown would betray every principle that had guided their actions since Lily first found him in that desolate alley. In the days following, a subdued urgency took hold of their household. Lily's father contacted a local animal rescue volunteer he'd met through Dr. Fielding, discreetly explaining the situation. Together, they devised a plan to keep watch for suspicious vehicles or individuals around their building. Lily's mother researched potential safe houses or foster networks outside the city, in case they needed to move Rusty suddenly. Even Lily joined the effort, creating simple flyers pleading for anyone with information about Greenway Kennels to come forward anonymously. Although no direct leads surfaced, the family's circle of concern widened. and a quiet determination spread through the block. Neighbors who had once offered only curious stares now voiced support, leaving notes of encouragement or spare dog supplies at their door. Through it all, Rusty sensed the undercurrent of anxiety enveloping the tiny apartment. He'd sometimes whine in the middle of the night, pacing the hallway as if anticipating an approaching threat. Yet, with Lily's soothing presence, her gentle hugs, her patient voice reading bedtime stories, he found a measure of security. The dog who had once teetered on the edge of surrender began to believe that maybe, just maybe, a future free from fear was possible. Amid these emotional upheavals, Lily's bond with Rusty blossomed into something far beyond childlike pity. She saw in him a wounded soul that mirrored her own longing for a kinder world. In his tentative tail wags, she recognized the pure joy that blossoms when unconditional love is returned, but the revelation of Rusty's probable past cast a dark shadow over their fragile sanctuary. Danger loomed, and their quiet mission to save one dog threatened to expose a darker underbelly of cruelty. The question gnawing at them all was, how far would the faceless perpetrators go to reclaim their property? And would the family's unyielding compassion stand against the weight of organized neglect? The revelation that Rusty's past might be tied to a hidden network of dog exploitation or even dogfighting sent ripples of unease through Lily's family. Though they had anticipated challenges when they decided to take the injured stray into their home, they never imagined the danger could extend beyond high vet bills and suspicious stares from neighbors. Now every creak in the hallway, every glare from a stranger seemed tinged with menace. Lily's mother, once hesitant to keep any dog under their cramped roof, found herself gripped by a maternal protectiveness that surprised even her. During quiet moments at the kitchen table, she would flip through the meager evidence they had. The menacing note, the partial microchip record pointing to a place called Greenway Kennels, and a series of unsolved cases of neglected dogs found in the vicinity. Her nurturing instincts warred with her practical side. "We have so little space, so little money," she would sigh to Lily's father in hushed tones. "But I can't turn my back now, not when I see how Rusty looks at Lily with absolute trust." Her husband, equally torn, tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. By day, he juggled his long shifts as a taxi driver. By night, he pored over news articles and online forums about illegal dog rings, searching for any clue that could explain why someone might threaten them over a half-starved mutt. The more he uncovered, the more his anger overshadowed his fear. "It's not about the dog alone," he confided to his wife, voice low so Lily wouldn't overhear. "It's about standing up to cruelty. If we give Rusty up, we're letting them win." For Lily, the latest revelation stirred a swirl of emotions that a child her age should never have to navigate. She noticed the tension in her parents' hushed discussions, sensed the strain etched in their voices whenever the phone rang unexpectedly. At school, her mind wandered from arithmetic problems to thoughts of Rusty, alone at home, still healing, while a silent threat loomed. Yet rather than succumb to fear, Lily's determination only grew. She spent evenings comforting Rusty with gentle caresses, softly promising that she would never let him return to a life of pain. In those moments, the dog, still bearing scars of old wounds, would lean into her touch as if pledging his own quiet loyalty in return. As for Rusty himself, his slow recovery continued, though the emotional scars ran deep. On some nights, he would startle awake from nightmares, whining and trembling. Lily's mother would hurry from her bedroom, wrapping him in a comforting embrace until his shivering subsided. Other times, he would pace restlessly by the front door, ears cocked at every passing footstep, an echo of the fear that once defined his existence. Yet, with each passing day, he allowed his guard to drop a bit more. He learned to relish the simple pleasures of a warm bed, a steady meal, and Lily's endless supply of tender hugs. Recognizing the need for professional guidance, the family consulted with Dr. Fielding about Rusty's psychological well-being. The vet recommended a trauma-informed dog trainer who specialized in rehabilitating abused animals. Though the trainer's fees were daunting, Lily's parents recognized they couldn't face this alone. Under the trainer's gentle approach, Rusty began learning basic commands, regaining a sense of structure and safety. Each small achievement, responding to his name, wagging his tail upon Lily's return from school, glowed like a beacon of hope in their otherwise anxious household. Meanwhile, help arrived from unexpected corners of the community. Moved by Lily's devotion, a few neighbors banded together to offer assistance. One volunteered to walk Rusty during the day when Lily's parents were at work. Another, skilled with computers, searched online databases for any additional clues about Greenway kennels. Their findings painted a grim picture of unregulated breeding operations linked to multiple states, though no solid evidence directly tied them to the menacing note. Nonetheless, the collaborative spirit reminded the family that they were not alone in this fight. Still, the looming question remained: who had threatened them and why? Each evening, Lily's mother would double-check the locks, glance uneasily through a gap in the curtains, half expecting to see that suspicious dark van lurking outside. Lily's father, recalling the break-in attempt and the photograph pinned to their door, considered installing a simple security camera they could hardly afford. And Lily, resolute in her love for Rusty, practiced an unspoken vigilance, eyeing every unfamiliar face on their street, wary of anyone who might be watching. This state of high alert gradually wore on the family's nerves, but it also forged a stronger bond between them. Over hastily prepared dinners, they discussed not just how to protect Rusty, but also how to shed light on the cruelty that had nearly destroyed him. Each time they revisited Dr. Fielding's hints about underground rings of illegal dog activities, indignation flared anew. Lily, with childlike innocence, would ask, "Why do people hurt dogs? Why can't they see how wonderful they are?" Her parents, stumbling for answers, could only shake their heads, pained by the realization that not everyone valued life the way they did. In the midst of this turmoil, small rays of hope cut through. Rusty, once too weak to stand, now greeted Lily at the door each afternoon with a tremulous tail wag that spoke volumes. He'd gingerly place one paw on her lap, an invitation to share a moment of trust. Sometimes Lily's mother would catch the pair napping together on the couch, Lily's hand resting protectively over Rusty's scarred side. The sight, though tinged with heartbreak, overflowed with the quiet marvel of a life saved and a bond blossoming. Yet, beneath the surface, tension simmered. A reckoning seemed inevitable, a confrontation with those who considered Rusty their property, or perhaps a decisive showdown with the shadows that had threatened the family's newfound warmth. In every stolen glance at the window, in every uncertain footstep on the apartment's stairwell, Lily's parents felt the weight of an unseen presence lurking. The dog they had tried to rescue from despair had brought them face to face with a cruel reality they had never before dared to acknowledge. Would their devotion be enough to protect Rusty from the dark forces that once nearly claimed his life? And could Lily's unwavering belief in kindness stand strong when tested by the ruthless hands of exploitation? As the family clung to one another amid the swirling uncertainties, only time would reveal whether their compassion could indeed usher in the miracle Lily had glimpsed that very first day in the alley. In the days following their difficult decision to shelter Rusty, the family's life steadily shifted to accommodate the frail dog's needs. Yet, as Lily's parents soon realized, caring for him was far from their only challenge. A swirl of new subplots and complications arose, each threatening the precarious stability they'd worked so hard to maintain. One of the most immediate challenges came from their landlord, Mr. Steinberg. A fastidious man with a sharp eye for any disruption, he appeared at the family's door soon after news spread that they'd taken in a stray dog. "Pets are tolerated under strict conditions," he declared, arms folded in disapproval. "I've received complaints of barking at odd hours and smells from your unit." While Rusty's gentle whines hardly qualified as disturbance, the landlord clung to technicalities. He issued a formal warning. If the dog caused any further inconvenience, they'd face possible eviction. The threat of losing their home weighed heavily on Lily's parents. Already tight on finances, they could ill afford to move, let alone cover the costs of deposit and first month's rent for a new place. Trying to appease Mr. Steinberg, they installed an air freshener system, carefully cleaned after Rusty, and reassured neighbors who cast curious glances in the hallway. But the tension lingered. Each time Rusty stirred at night or whimpered in his sleep, Lily's mother braced for a knock on the door or a stern phone call. Meanwhile, Lily's school life grew complicated as well. Initially, she had confided in a few friends about her quest to save the dog, proud of her secret heroics. But word spread quickly, and soon classmates teased or pried, wanting lurid details of a rescued dog from the streets. Some ridiculed her for what they saw as playing savior, while others seemed vaguely intrigued, occasionally peppering her with questions about how the dog was doing. Lily, normally open-hearted, found herself growing guarded, not wanting to expose Rusty's vulnerabilities or her own family's precarious situation to idle gossip. She worried about bullies discovering the landlord's complaints, or even the menacing note pinned to their door and using it against her. At the same time, Lily's father, determined to protect his family and honor Lily's devotion, launched his own quiet investigation. He began discreetly scanning social media for any mention of Greenway Kennels, the name fragment Dr. Fielding had uncovered from Rusty's chipped collar data. To his dismay, he stumbled across alarming rumors on local forums. Posts hinted that a ring of individuals was breeding dogs for underground fighting rings. Though the pieces were disjointed, scattered references to trucks spotted at odd hours, overheard boasts about violent wagers, they pointed to a darker undercurrent within the city's underbelly. Complicating matters further was a new subplot involving Lily's older brother, Ryan. Disconnected from the household drama until now, he returned from a stint at a distant trade school, only to walk into a tense environment brimming with secrets. Initially indifferent to the dog, Ryan became uneasy upon discovering the cryptic note and hearing about the suspicious break-in attempts. "You're telling me some criminals want this half-dead mutt back?" he asked incredulously, eyebrows raised. "Why not just hand him to a shelter and wash our hands of the whole mess?" His blunt perspective clashed with Lily's tender heart. Arguments flared at the dinner table, Lily's eyes filling with tears when Ryan proposed that their own safety took priority over a dog they scarcely knew. Yet in these clashes, a seed of protectiveness sprouted in Ryan. Observing Lily's desperation to save Rusty and their parents' anxious resolve, he began taking nightly walks around the apartment building, keeping an eye out for anyone lurking too long or snapping photos of their windows. Across town, Dr. Fielding also wrestled with mounting concerns. A stray dog with ties to an illicit operation put her at an uneasy intersection of veterinary care and potential criminal activity. During one of Rusty's follow-up exams, she quietly admitted her worries to Lily's mother. "If these people are as dangerous as rumors suggest, they won't hesitate to intimidate or harm those standing in their way," she confided, her tone grim. She then handed over a list of resources: rescue organizations, legal aid clinics, even a private investigator's contact. "You may need help beyond medical care," she said softly, her eyes reflecting empathy. "Please don't wait if the situation escalates." The final subplot emerged from within the community itself. Word of Lily's act of kindness had spread, transforming her into something of a local curiosity. A retired journalist named Miss Hawkins, now volunteering at the local library, approached Lily's family with a proposal, a small feature in the local paper, highlighting the dog's rescue and raising awareness about animal cruelty. Lily was thrilled at the thought of rallying support for Rusty. Her parents, however, hesitated. They feared public exposure might draw unwanted attention from those seeking to reclaim Rusty for nefarious purposes. Ms. Hawkins understood their concerns, but gently argued that shining a light on cruelty could galvanize the community into vigilant protection. These converging threads, landlord threats, schoolyard intrigue, illegal dogfighting rumors, family squabbles, and media interest, complicated the initial mission of nursing Rusty back to health. Instead of a straightforward rescue, the family found themselves enmeshed in a tapestry of moral dilemmas and real-world dangers. Each subplot tugged at their sense of duty, love, and survival, intensifying the emotional stakes beyond what any of them had anticipated. Rusty, oblivious to the swirling drama, continued his slow climb toward physical recovery. He responded well to the medication and the love showered upon him, tail wagging more frequently each time Lily walked through the door. Yet his eyes still flickered with fear when sudden noises broke the calm, and nightmares still shook him from sleep. To Lily, Each step forward, no matter how small, proved that miracles were possible. To her parents, it underscored the reality that they had taken on a burden as exhilarating as it was perilous. In that charged atmosphere, Lily's mother quietly voiced what they all felt. "It's like we've opened a door to a world we never knew existed, a world of cruelty, but also of compassion. We can't close it now, not after seeing how one act of care can change a life." And so, with each subplot twisting tighter around their everyday struggles, the family braced for the challenges yet to come, unaware that their tangled destinies with Rusty would soon lead them to confront an adversary capable of shattering their fragile sense of security, or unlocking the miracle Lily had believed in from the start. A sense of uneasy calm hung over Lily's household as they adapted to caring for Rusty under the looming shadow of unknown threats. While the once skeletal dog now looked a fraction healthier, his coat a little shinier, his eyes more alert, everyone realized that the emotional scars ran far deeper than any physical wound. The daily routine of feeding, gentle grooming, and short walks was a testament to Lily's unwavering compassion, yet each small success reminded them that the larger dangers were far from resolved. Increasingly, Lily's mother found herself torn between her protective instincts for her daughter and her growing sympathy for Rusty. At the family's modest kitchen table, she would anxiously sift through bills from Dr. Fielding's clinic, wincing at the accumulating costs. At the same time, her heart would soften whenever Lily knelt beside Rusty, reading aloud from a battered storybook about lost creatures finding a home. She'd watch as Rusty, soothed by Lily's voice, laid his head on her lap with an air of fragile trust. In those moments, the mother grasped that their choice to keep this dog wasn't merely an act of charity, it was an affirmation of the values she longed to uphold. Meanwhile, Lily's father wrestled with his own blend of guilt and protectiveness. He would sit on the living room couch late into the evening, a phone in one hand, researching rescue organizations that might offer sanctuary. Deep down, he recognized that no matter their devotion, the family's tiny apartment and strained finances were not ideal for long-term care. Yet whenever he caught a glimpse of Lily quietly stroking Rusty's fur, murmuring reassurances, he hesitated. Each alternative solution felt inadequate. Could he really tear Lily away from this dog she had rescued from the brink? Moreover, the ongoing threats hinted that relinquishing Rusty to a public shelter might only make him more accessible to those with sinister intentions. In these domestic struggles, the older son Ryan's cynicism clashed with Lily's unbreakable optimism. One evening, as a cold wind rattled the windows, Ryan confronted Lily in the hallway. "You do realize this dog might not ever fully recover, right?" he questioned, a mix of concern and frustration in his voice. "And if those creeps come looking for him, we're risking our whole family for something that might never be okay." Lily glared at her brother, fists tightening. "He's worth it," she shot back, tears brimming in her eyes. "Why can't you see that saving him is the right thing to do?" Ryan exhaled sharply, torn between wanting to shield his sister from disappointment and begrudgingly respecting her fierce empathy. Meanwhile, Lily's quiet interactions with classmates at school grew more strained. Rumors about the rescue dog drama circulated among curious peers, and a few older kids made snide remarks whenever they overheard her asking teachers for help with fundraising ideas. Though she tried to brush off the teasing, each taunt or eye roll pricked at Lily's confidence. Yet, she discovered unexpected allies too. A shy girl named Amara, who had seldom spoken up before, offered Lily a small donation from her allowance. "I wish I could adopt every stray I see," Amara whispered, her own eyes shimmering with feeling. Their bond over kindness in a sometimes unkind world lent Lily a flicker of hope that resonated far beyond the classroom walls. As for Rusty himself, his progress remained slow but steady. Some nights, the family would gather in the living room, watching as he gingerly navigated the apartment, investigating corners and curiously sniffing at the worn-out furniture. The once fearful dog seemed to be rediscovering a spark of curiosity. Yet, a sudden loud noise, a dropped frying pan or a slammed door, could still send him cowering behind Lily's legs. Dr. Fielding's recommended trainer visited weekly, guiding the family on trauma-informed methods to build Rusty's confidence. Simple exercises, Learning to sit on command, responding to gentle whistles, became small victories cheered by the entire household. Despite these strides, an undercurrent of anxiety colored every tender moment. Late at night, Lily's mother would jolt awake at the slightest sound outside, heart pounding as she tiptoed to the window, scanning the dimly lit street. Her father, dozing in an armchair after a long workday, often stirred from restless dreams about mysterious vans idling near the alley. Even Lily, though steadfast in her commitment, felt the weight of unspoken fears. Each afternoon, she'd hurry home from school half expecting to find their apartment ransacked or Rusty gone, but every time she opened the door to see him wagging a scruffy tail, relief coursed through her like a warm tide. Amid these emotional upheavals, an unexpected visitor arrived one chilly weekend. Mrs. Ramos, the elderly woman who lived upstairs. In a gentle, wavering voice, she confessed to having seen suspicious figures lurking around the building at odd hours. "I'm not one for drama, dear," she told Lily's mother, hands trembling around her cane. "But it seemed they were checking each door. It scared me enough to lock my own place tight." Her words, though softly spoken, landed like a sledgehammer of dread. Clearly, their concerns weren't mere paranoia. Someone really was watching. Faced with this mounting tension, Lily's parents convened a serious family meeting. Sitting around the kitchen table, with Rusty dozing at Lily's feet, they discussed each new challenge: the financial strain, landlord threats, potential criminals, and the unraveling emotional toll on the entire household. The mother laid out a stack of printouts from local rescues, each with limited capacity or strict guidelines about accepting strays with uncertain pasts. The father brought up various self-defense options or upgrading the apartment's security, but each plan felt precarious. Throughout, Lily listened quietly, tears forming at the corners of her eyes as her parents weighed the possibility of giving Rusty up for everyone's safety. In that fraught moment, the family recognized the heart of their dilemma. Protecting Rusty meant risking further entanglement with dangerous forces. Relinquishing him would mean crushing Lily's spirit and condemning the dog to an unknown fate. Was there a middle ground? Could they find a way to shield themselves while granting Rusty the sanctuary he so desperately needed? As the discussion wore on, the girl who first found hope in an abandoned dog spoke up with a trembling resolve. "He never gave up, even when everyone else did. We can't give up on him now." Her words hung in the silent kitchen, and in each parent's gaze flickered the realization that sometimes the greatest acts of love carry the heaviest risks. With no easy answers, they only knew one thing for certain. Their choice to save Rusty had become a commitment to stand against whatever darkness threatened them, united by the fragile yet powerful bond forged by a child's compassion and a dog's unwavering trust. A low winter sun cast elongated shadows over the worn concrete and sagging fences around Lily's apartment building. Though snow had yet to fall, the air bore the biting chill of a season on the cusp of turning. Inside the cramped living room, Rusty dozed near a small space heater while Lily hovered protectively beside him, her warm gaze reflecting both love and a lingering apprehension. Despite a veneer of routine, school and work, daily dog walks, an undercurrent of dread pulled at everyone's nerves. A single ominous question loomed: when would the silent threat finally manifest? Early one Saturday morning, Lily's father decided to venture a bit deeper into the local rumor mill. A neighbor had mentioned a defunct warehouse 2 blocks away, once a storage facility for scrap metal, where unfamiliar vehicles had been spotted at odd hours. Unsure what he hoped to find, he donned a heavy coat and crept out while Lily and her mother were busy with breakfast. The warehouse stood grim and foreboding, its windows boarded, its corrugated metal walls defaced by years of graffiti. Though outwardly deserted, faint tire tracks were visible in the slushy mud behind it, leading to a side entrance. Peering through a gap in the boards, he saw only dim shapes, perhaps boxes or crates stacked in disarray. But the prickling at the back of his neck told him there was more hidden in the darkness. He returned home, shaken, unsure whether to confess his findings. Over the kitchen table, he finally admitted to Lily's mother what he'd seen. "Something's going on in that old warehouse," he murmured, gaze darting to where Rusty lay. "I can't say for sure it's tied to the dog's past, but the presence of trucks at dawn, the note, the suspicious break-in attempts, It's all adding up. Lily's mother hugged herself against a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty apartment. So what do we do? Call the police with no real evidence? She trailed off, eyes reflecting how powerless they felt, teetering on the edge of secrets they never asked to uncover. As tensions simmered within the household, the stress began taking a toll on Rusty. He frequently paced in circles, whining at odd hours, and cowered whenever Lily's parents raised their voices, even in harmless disagreements. Lily, determined to soothe him, spent evenings patiently teaching him to respond to calm commands and offering tidbits of reassurance. The dog's eyes held gratitude, but also a flicker of panic whenever he sensed disruption in the family's fragile sanctuary. Simultaneously, Lily's mother wrestled with new pressures from their landlord, Mr. Steinberg. One grey afternoon, he appeared with a stern reminder of the building's pet policy, claiming more neighbors had complained about unusual activity and strangers lurking in hallways. Though Lily's mother insisted they had only visitors from the vet or rescue volunteers, Mr. Steinberg remained unconvinced. "I'm not accusing you of anything," he said icily, "but I don't want trouble around here. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to reconsider your lease." The veiled threat only solidified the family's anxiety, each daily routine overshadowed by the fear of losing their home. Amid these looming pressures, Lily found a surprising ally in Ryan, her older brother. Initially skeptical and annoyed at the family's predicament, he grew increasingly protective as the situation escalated. One evening, he confided to Lily that he was skipping after-school hangouts to keep watch around the building, hoping to spot any suspicious faces returning. Though Lily felt a pang of guilt that her dog rescue had upended her brother's usual life, she clutched at his words like a buoy of support. Together, they devised a rudimentary system. Lily would text Ryan whenever she noticed anything odd near the apartment, and he would rush home to help. It wasn't a perfect plan, just a sign of unity. Tension reached a new peak when Sarah, a freelance journalist from a local paper, contacted Lily's mother asking for an interview, through a friend of Dr. Fielding. Sarah had heard rumors of a neglected dog rescued from near death and a family reportedly threatened by unknown parties. Sarah's request: "If you let me tell your story without revealing sensitive details, I might expose a network of cruelty that's gone unchecked." Lily's parents, torn between a desire to spotlight animal exploitation and a fear of drawing attention to themselves, debated late into the night. "We could help other animals in Rusty's situation," Lily argued fervently, tears brimming. But her father countered, "Publicity might also tip off whoever's threatening us." In the end, they compromised, a short, anonymous piece focusing on Rusty's recovery journey and the broader issue of abandoned dogs, omitting any identifying clues about their family. The article published under the headline "Small Acts of Kindness, a Child's Rescue Mission," generated cautious curiosity in the neighborhood. Some passers-by stopped Lily to express admiration for her bravery, while others whispered about potential retaliation from a ring of clandestine criminals rumored to lurk in forgotten corners of the city. The swirl of rumor and speculation created a fragile sense of solidarity. Several neighbors, once indifferent, quietly dropped off bags of dog food or old blankets at the family's door. Their gestures hinted at the possibility of a collective stand against cruelty, fueled by Lily's unwavering devotion. All the while, the dog's unknown past loomed like a specter, refusing to let them fully relax. One frigid evening, as Lily's father guided Rusty through the building's dimly lit corridor for a final walk of the day, footsteps echoed behind them. Turning, he glimpsed a figure ducking into the stairwell, disappearing before he could call out. The occurrence left him uneasy throughout the night. Did their pursuers now lurk closer, biding their time, or was it merely paranoia conjured by a mind stretched thin? At the center of this swirling tension, Lily clung to an unwavering hope. She saw Rusty's slow but steady transformation, his coat growing a bit thicker, tail wagging with more conviction, and felt certain that their compassion could overcome any menace. In the rare quiet moments, as she lay on a threadbare rug in the living room, gently scratching Rusty's ears, she whispered promises of a brighter future. "We won't let them hurt you. she murmured, voice trembling with fierce resolve. And in his tired eyes, she caught an answering spark, a fragile faith in a world that had once cast him aside. Thus, while fresh intrigues threatened the delicate peace, landlord ultimatums, lurking shadows, media attention, the family's bond with Rusty only deepened. Loved especially that born of rescue and resilience, can prove astonishingly strong. Yet, unbeknownst to Lily, the final test of that love and strength lay just beyond the horizon, where the forces that once discarded Rusty might stand poised to reclaim or punish what they deemed their property. The die was cast. The gentle flame Lily had kindled flickered in the cold wind of looming peril, demanding all her courage to shield it from being snuffed out forever. In the days that followed, the web of tensions around Lily, her family, and their fragile new houseguest continued to tighten. What had begun as a simple rescue mission, one little girl's decision to give hope to a dying dog, had expanded into a full-blown defense against unseen adversaries and looming threats. At times, it felt as though each passing day introduced yet another thread to the growing tapestry of challenges they faced. One crisp afternoon, Lily's mother received a phone call from Dr. Fielding's assistant. "We've heard rumors about someone inquiring about a lost pit mix that might match Rusty's description," she said carefully. They weren't forthcoming with details, just insisted they had to find their property. The assistant went on to explain how she'd grown suspicious, given the vague, forceful tone of the inquiries. After promising not to disclose the dog's location, she hung up, worried that the caller might resort to more aggressive tactics to track him down. The news rekindled old fears in Lily's parents. If these individuals connected Rusty's location to their address, what would they do next? Meanwhile, Councilwoman Ramirez, alerted by the same rumors, paid the family a discreet visit. A passionate advocate for stricter animal welfare laws, she arrived with a folder of documents that outlined known cases of dog trafficking and illegal breeding in the region. "We've been trying to crack down on these rings for years," she explained, flipping through pages that showed harrowing photos of abused animals. "They operate in shadows, using social media to sell dogs or coordinate fights, often discarding any animal deemed unprofitable." Her eyes softened as she glanced at Rusty's still bony frame. "He's lucky to have found you." Lily's father glanced nervously at the folder. The more he learned about these rings, the more he realized the potential peril they all faced, both physically and legally. "What if they come after us?" he asked quietly. Ramirez hesitated before replying, "We can't guarantee safety, but we can raise awareness. Sometimes shedding light on these crimes scares off perpetrators. They hate public scrutiny, but it's a gamble." Lily's mother, hands clasped tightly in her lap, noted how each piece of advice led to another fork in the road, each path fraught with risks. She squeezed Lily's hand, seeking reassurance from her daughter's unwavering belief that right would prevail. Simultaneously, events in the neighborhood grew more entwined with the family's plight. A small group of concerned residents, spurred by Lily's compassion, formed an informal pet watch. They communicated via text messages, reporting any odd behaviors, like a strange van idling in the parking lot or new graffiti tags that seemed threatening. Mrs. Ramos, the elderly neighbor from upstairs, took it upon herself to document every suspicious face that peered too long at Lily's door, although her shaky cell phone shots often yielded little more than blurry silhouettes. Still, the collective vigilance offered a fragile sense of security and a communal sense of purpose. In the midst of these escalating tensions, Lily's older brother, Ryan, found an unexpected ally in one of his high school acquaintances, a tech-savvy classmate named Mateo. Intrigued by rumors of illegal dog rings, Mateo offered to do some digital digging, scouring obscure online forums and local social media groups for any mention of a dog that matched Rusty's description. Ryan was initially skeptical, but desperation spurred him to accept the help. Within days, Mateo compiled a file of cryptic user profiles, coded language about merch and returns, and possible meeting spots rumored to be used for clandestine exchanges. Though unverified, these fragments painted a chilling picture of organized exploitation. "If any of these leads match Rusty's story," Mateo warned, We might be up against a larger network than we thought. As if to confirm these suspicions, Lily's parents discovered another note slipped under their door one wintry morning. Unlike the first threatening message, this one bore a calmer but no less ominous tone. "You have something that's not yours. Return it to avoid consequences." The father, pulse pounding, showed it to Lily's mother in hushed alarm. Lily, sensing their distress, pressed for answers. They tried to shield her from the stark truth, but the girl's wide-eyed determination demanded honesty. With tears threatening to spill, Lily insisted, "We can't give him back, not to people who hurt him." Her mother, eyes brimming with her own fears, could only nod, a silent promise that they wouldn't betray Rusty's trust. All the while, Rusty's quiet progress continued. Under the guidance of the trauma-informed trainer, he learned to accept gentle handling from Lily's parents and even allowed Ryan to walk him around the block. At mealtimes, he no longer scarfed down food in a panic, as though it might be snatched away, but ate steadily, occasionally pausing to glance around in contentment. Moments like these filled Lily with boundless optimism. "He's healing," she whispered one evening, stroking Rusty's now slightly thicker coat. "If he can overcome what happened to him, maybe we can overcome all this trouble, too." Yet, the sense of calm was perpetually disrupted by the knowledge that someone, somewhere, considered Rusty their lost asset and Lily's family a stubborn barrier. So random overheard conversation in the hallway or a parked car with tinted windows was enough to send Lily's mother into a wave of anxiety. Was an actual confrontation inevitable? Would they be forced to flee or endure violence if the criminals decided to reclaim the dog? In response, the family took incremental security measures. They replaced their flimsy lock with a sturdier deadbolt, despite the landlord's grumbling. Lily's father quietly purchased a basic security camera for their hallway, installing it one late evening with help from Ryan. Lily's mother, nerves frayed by the tension, began scanning every face she met at the grocery store, half expecting to spot a clue that might explain why they'd become entangled in such a dangerous web. But for all the fear swirling around them, moments of grace persisted. A neighbor anonymously left a bag of premium dog food at their doorstep with a note, "For the brave dog and the brave girl." Another day, a teacher at Lily's school pulled her aside, whispering praise for her kindness and hinting at a community fundraiser that might help cover Rusty's veterinary bills. Small acts of solidarity lit the dark corridors of worry, reminding the family that compassion could still shine a path through uncertain times. Thus, each subplot, neighbors rallying, a local councilwoman investigating, a teenage brother turned amateur detective, wove into the main thread of Lily's rescue mission. In every fleeting sigh of relief, the question remained: how long before the final confrontation? The deeper they delved into Rusty's mysterious past, the more they sensed an invisible clock ticking down. In the face of that looming showdown, Lily and her family clung to the very bond that had sparked this journey: a little girl's unstoppable compassion and a dog's steadfast trust that not all humans had turned their backs on him. I'm mapping out Block 9, aiming for an 800-word piece with under 6,000 characters. The story intertwines an abandoned dog, rising threats, familial resilience, and escalating subplots, leading to a pivotal climax. Despite the family's best efforts to maintain a semblance of normalcy, the tension around Rusty's presence reached a boiling point. Each new day seemed to escalate the undercurrent of fear and uncertainty into something tangible, something that hinted at a final, decisive confrontation looming just around the corner. Lily's household, once defined by modest routines and quiet dinners, now felt like a tightrope walk through a swirling storm. The first sign that the situation was nearing its breaking point came in the form of a second mysterious note slipped under their door. This time, the message was terse yet more ominous. "Your time is running out. Return what isn't yours." It was clear that whoever lurked behind the shadows believed Rusty to be their property and was growing bolder with each passing day. Lily's father, trying to contain his anger, tore the paper to shreds but found no relief in the act. The threat still hung like a cold blade above them. Meanwhile, the tension in the building's corridors intensified. Mr. Steinberg, the landlord, received vague complaints about sketchy strangers loitering near Lily's door. He cornered Lily's parents in the hallway, exasperation twisting his features as he demanded an explanation. "I have other tenants to think about," he fumed, glancing suspiciously at Rusty lying quietly at Lily's feet. "If this trouble continues, I'll have no choice but to evict you." Though Lily's mother tried to reason with him, emphasizing their vigilance and the lack of any direct confrontation, Mr. Steinberg remained unimpressed. His parting words, "Sort it out or I will," slammed the door on any hope of the landlord's compassion. Feeling cornered, Lily's father reached out to Councilwoman Ramirez, who had previously shown interest in animal welfare issues. During a tense phone call, he explained the escalation of threats, the anonymous notes, and the suspicious break-in attempts. Ramirez, though sympathetic, admitted her hands were tied without concrete evidence of criminal wrongdoing. "How you might need to consider protective measures," she warned. "If this group is as dangerous as rumors suggest, they won't hesitate to intimidate you further." Her words struck like a hammer blow. Lily's mother, overhearing the call, slumped against the kitchen counter, tears of frustration glazing her eyes. At school, Lily struggled to keep up appearances. Though classmates and teachers praised her for rescuing a neglected dog, she couldn't shake the dread that weighed on her mind. She found herself jumping at locker doors slamming, startled by sudden movements in the hallway. Some nights, she woke up from nightmares where a faceless figure snatched Rusty away into the darkness, leaving her powerless to stop them. Yet, in the morning, her resolve always returned. She'd shuffle into the living room, greet Rusty with a gentle hug, and promise him they would stand strong together. Unbeknownst to Lily, her older brother, Ryan, had taken on a protective role behind the scenes. Through late-night conversations with the tech-savvy Mateo, he managed to unearth more chatter on obscure online forums referencing product retrieval and unfinished business. While nothing explicitly mentioned Rusty by name, the timing and context felt unsettlingly close. In hushed family discussions, Ryan relayed these findings. The father, gripping his coffee mug as if it were a lifeline, realized that their quiet home was effectively under siege by unknown criminals who might already have them under surveillance. All these threads of anxiety converged in one fateful incident. Late on a Thursday evening, Lily's mother, returning from a second shift job, found the apartment door slightly ajar. Fear clutched her heart as she crept inside, expecting the worst. Lamps were switched on, but the living room was empty. Then she heard Lily's hushed sobs from the bedroom. Rushing in, she discovered Lily huddled beside Rusty, who was trembling uncontrollably. The dog's bedding was strewn across the floor, and the window that opened onto the fire escape stood half open. The lock pried loose. Someone had been there. Someone searching, perhaps, for Rusty. Though they'd apparently fled before Lily arrived home from school, the signs of forced entry were undeniable. The father, arriving moments later, surveyed the damage with a grim set to his jaw. "This can't go on," he said, voice hoarse. Lily's tears reflected not only terror, but heartbreak that her rescue mission might be undone by faceless predators who cared for nothing but their own interests. In a rare display of unity, the family convened an emergency meeting that same night. The cramped kitchen filled with tense, urgent whispers as they weighed their dwindling options. Should they contact the police, seek refuge in a shelter, relinquish Rusty to a secure rescue facility in hopes it could hide him from those who prowled the shadows? Each suggestion bristled with risk. The father reached for the battered folder that contained every bit of evidence they'd accumulated, threatening notes, suspicious sightings, partial microchip data, and even a digital log from Ryan's investigations. "We need to show this to someone who can help," he murmured, scanning each worried face. "Someone with the power to stop these people in their tracks." In that charged moment, Rusty pressed himself against Lily's legs, his body trembling from the earlier scare. Observing the dog's silent distress, Lily felt a wave of defiance surge through her. She stood up, hands balled into fists. "No matter what they do, we can't abandon him. He trusts us, maybe for the first time in his life. We have to protect him." Her voice, laden with both innocence and conviction, tore at her parents' fear-weary hearts. They realized it with a clarity born of crisis, that their initial compassion had grown into something much larger, a duty to stand against cruelty, to defend life on the brink of surrender. The next morning, Lily's father made calls to local rescue groups, seeking advice on secure fostering options for animals under threat. Lily's mother, swallowing her anxiety, typed out an email to the local authorities, attaching scanned images of the menacing notes and photos of the damaged apartment window. The dreaded moment was here, a turning point where the family acknowledged they could not handle this alone. Their desperate choice to open their door to a dying dog had brought them face to face with an underbelly of exploitation. Yet in the face of unknown adversaries, they refused to yield. That morning also marked a shift in Rusty's eyes. As Lily prepared to leave for school, the dog nuzzled her hand, gaze filled with something resembling silent gratitude. No longer just a victim of abandonment, he had become a symbol of the family's resilience. And as the father escorted Lily out the door, scanning the hallway for lurking figures, he felt a sliver of hope that their final stand against the darkness was about to unfold, one that would either solidify their miracle or tear it apart at the seams. The tension that had been simmering in Lily's home reached a near unbearable level. As they approached the day of the official logging, Lily's father, who had once believed they could manage quietly, realized that their situation would inevitably collide with bigger forces. With the threat of eviction looming, hostile notes pinned to their door, and suspicious figures lingering around the building, the family knew they were running out of time and options. Compassion alone would not shield them from the darkness that seemed to encroach on their small apartment each day. One cold morning, Lily's mother received a phone call from Dr. Fielding. She spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. "I've heard from a colleague that a shadowy group is actively searching for a dog that escaped their operation. They're calling it their property. They suspect it's injured, and the description sounds exactly like Rusty." A chill enveloped Lily's mother as she thanked Dr. Fielding and hung up. The rest of the family listened in stunned silence. The father clenched his fists, frustration evident in the tightness of his jaw. Lily stood by Rusty, gently laying a hand on his scruffy fur. Though she was only a child, Lily recognized the severity of the situation. If these people found out exactly where Rusty was, what lengths would they go to reclaim him? That afternoon, at the urging of Councilwoman Ramirez, the family agreed to meet with a police liaison. They arrived at the small station house on the outskirts of the city, hearts pounding. A plainclothes officer, Officer Howard, greeted them with a kind but sober expression. Over a short, tense conversation, he reviewed the threatening notes, the break-in and the suspicious inquiries. "Your evidence is concerning," Officer Howard acknowledged, steepling his fingers. "However, without concrete proof of who these individuals are or their exact intentions, our hands are partly tied. We can keep an eye on your area and advise you on safety measures. But you might want to consider alternative living arrangements if you fear for your family's well-being." His words, though practical, offered little comfort. Lily's parents exchanged worried glances, the father clenching and unclenching his hands in frustration. Was uprooting their life the only way to keep Lily and Rusty safe? Meanwhile, Lily began to notice how the stress frayed the edges of her parents' patience. The mother, once gentle-voiced, grew snappy when Lily's school forms needed signing or groceries had to be stretched further than usual. The father, after long shifts, stared broodingly at the living room wall, a deepening frown cutting into his brow. Yet Lily also observed how Rusty, sensing their distress, would nudge them quietly, as if urging them to remain united. In the dog's eyes, she saw the same plea he'd had in that deserted alley, the hope that he wouldn't be discarded again. As the external pressures mounted, an internal confrontation brewed within each member of the household, whether to continue defying the unknown adversaries or to relinquish Rusty to a rescue group that could hide him away. Ryan, Lily's older brother, argued fiercely for placing the dog in a safe foster home far from the city. "We can't fight criminals, Lily," he reasoned one evening, voice strained. "And if they see him here, who knows what they'll do?" Lily's lip quivered at the idea of losing Rusty, but she also understood the risk her family faced. The father, drawn taut by weeks of worry, wavered between Ryan's logic and Lily's unwavering devotion. Their mother, exhausted, silently cried over the sink, torn between protecting her children and honoring the fragile life they had saved. Then, an unexpected visitor arrived. a volunteer from a reputable rescue organization who had heard about Rusty's plight through Dr. Fielding's network. With a gentle sincerity, she offered the family a place for Rusty in a private sanctuary outside the city's limits. He would be hidden from prying eyes, she reassured them. He'd have space to heal, and we'd keep his location confidential. For a moment, relief flickered across Lily's parents' faces. The father, especially, felt a burden lift at the prospect of removing the bullseye from their apartment door. Yet, as Lily listened, her heartbeat pounded in protest. Handing Rusty over to a distant sanctuary might be safest, but would it not also tear apart the only home he'd truly known, full of the kindness he'd never experienced before? Faced with this agonizing choice, a confrontation erupted one night around the dinner table. Emotions ran high as each family member voiced their stance. Ryan argued logically, "It's best for Rusty and best for us." Lily, tears filling her eyes, insisted that Rusty's emotional wounds demanded a consistent, loving environment, and that abandoning him, even to a well-intentioned sanctuary, could shatter his fragile trust. Their parents, caught between valid fears and Lily's earnest pleas, clashed in heated back and forths. The father, fists clenched, recalled the break-in attempts and stealthy notes. The mother, voice quivering, admitted she couldn't bear to see Lily's heart broken if anything happened to Rusty under their roof. Finally, in the midst of the argument, the father exhaled a ragged breath. In a calm yet resolute tone, he said, "We stand or fall as a family. If these people think they can bully us into surrendering this dog, they're wrong. We'll take every precaution, but we won't let fear decide our actions." His words hung in the charged air. Lily's eyes shone with gratitude, while Ryan, though unconvinced, respected the finality in his father's voice. That same night, Lily's mother tapped into her resolve, contacting Ms. Hawkins, the retired journalist who'd offered to highlight Rusty's story. Perhaps public exposure, carefully managed, could rally the community and deter further harassment. It was a bold gamble. Shining a spotlight on their situation might either scare away the criminals or provoke them further. But with every quiet choice the family made, they were leading themselves closer to a breaking point, a tipping point at which all illusions of safety would shatter, forcing them to face the unknown head-on. By midnight, the apartment lay still, each occupant lost in restless thoughts. Lily drifted to sleep beside Rusty's kennel, one hand resting on his flank as if to promise, "We're in this together." Outside, the city glowed under distant streetlights, oblivious to the silent battles waged in cramped kitchens and tearful discussions. Yet the final confrontation was coming. A confrontation sparked by a child's unwavering belief in the goodness of life, pitted against a faceless menace that cared only for profit or dominance. In that hush before dawn, as Lily's father gazed through the living room window at a quiet, empty street, he thought of the words Councilwoman Ramirez had once said, "Sometimes, the greatest power we have is in our refusal to abandon what we hold dear." Clutching that idea, he settled into a watchful vigil, sensing that the decisive moment, their family's final stand for Rusty's right to live free from cruelty, was near at hand. A frosty wind rattled the windows of Lily's cramped apartment as the family braced for an inevitable showdown. Every light in the living room was turned on, as if they could stave off the looming darkness through sheer illumination. Rusty, sensing the turmoil, refused to settle. He paced the small space, occasionally glancing at the front door with anxious eyes. Lily hovered beside him, whispering soft reassurances despite the knot of worry tightening in her own chest. That evening, the parents had resolved to share all their evidence and worries with Ms. Hawkins, the retired journalist who had taken an interest in Rusty's plight. Over a pot of hastily brewed tea, they laid out the threatening notes, the suspicious break-in, and Dr. Fielding's theory tying Rusty to a clandestine dog operation. Ms. Hawkins listened intently, her gaze flickering with both sympathy and journalistic resolve. "If you allow me to publish a detailed article," she said quietly, "we may stir the community's empathy and perhaps scare off those lurking in the shadows. But it's a gamble. Publicity can be a shield or a beacon." The father sighed heavily, knuckles white around his mug. "We can't remain hidden anymore," he admitted. "They keep pushing us toward fear. Maybe a public stand is our only choice. Little did they know, the final push was already in motion. Late that night, as Lily's father paced the living room, unable to sleep, he heard a muted thump near the hallway door. Heart pounding, he peered through the peephole, nothing but darkness. Gathering his courage, he opened the door to find another slip of paper. The note's scrawled words sent a shiver up his spine. Last warning, we take back what's ours or we destroy what you have. Its threat was stark, confirming the family's worst fear. The unknown tormentors would not relent peacefully. Lily's father locked the door, waking his wife to show her the latest menacing message. Exhausted but furious, she agreed. They would no longer cower in silence. A call was placed to Ms. Hawkins, who promised to expedite her article. The following morning, Ms. Hawkins' piece went live online, under the headline, "Family Under Siege for Rescuing a Lost Soul, the Story of Rusty, the Dog Who Defied Abandonment." The article wove together the family's ordeal, Rusty's plight, and warnings about a possible dogfighting or illegal breeding ring. It was a heartfelt plea for community support, urging readers to stand against cruelty. Within hours, social media erupted. Some condemned the unknown abusers, others offered donations or volunteer help, while a few skeptics accused the family of sensationalizing a sob story. Nonetheless, the piece brought a surge of attention, shining a spotlight on the mysterious forces harassing Lily's home. That afternoon, local authorities arrived in a marked patrol car to take an official statement, triggered by the article's revelations. Officer Howard, the liaison who had once given them cautious advice, stepped in accompanied by a stern-faced partner. They photographed the new note, inspected the damaged window, and took detailed accounts of the family's experiences. "We'll maintain a patrol in this area for the next few nights," Officer Howard promised, though a note of uncertainty tinged his voice. If these people are determined, this might only deter them temporarily. The father, jaw clenched, glanced at Rusty, who hovered behind Lily, quivering at the sight of uniformed strangers. "Whatever it takes," he murmured. Lily's mother added, "We can't live in fear forever." The officer nodded sympathetically but made no guarantees. While some neighbors rallied with fervor, leaving messages of solidarity taped to the family's door, others grew uneasy, fearing their building would become a magnet for criminal retaliation. Mr. Steinberg, the landlord, delivered another terse warning about public spectacles and security risks. Despite her growing frustration, Lily's mother managed a brittle politeness, assuring him they were cooperating with the police. After he stormed off, Lily's father, anger taut across his face, muttered, "We're not the criminals here, we're just trying to save a dog." Late that night, under a starless sky, the family clung to each other, each absorbed in private dread. The father double-checked the new locks. Lily's mother peered out the window every time headlights passed by, and Ryan roamed the hallway, phone in hand, ready to alert neighbors or the police if he spotted anything amiss. Even Ms. Hawkins lingered in her car outside for a short while, hoping her presence might deter potential trouble. Lily, though pale with anxiety, wouldn't leave Rusty's side. She stroked his still prominent ribs, murmuring, "We won't let them take you. I promise." As the clock ticked toward midnight, a quiet settled over the block that felt unnaturally tense. Lily's father, pacing the living room, sensed a coiling energy in the air, a standoff between the family's courage and the lurking shadows. Rusty, picking up on the tension, whimpered softly, pressing against Lily's legs. She gently shushed him, offering a soft smile that belied the knot in her stomach. "We've come so far," she whispered into his ear. "We can't lose now." Just as calm threatened to lull them into a false sense of security, a distant crash echoed from outside, a sound too jarring to be mere coincidence. The father grabbed his coat, Lily's mother hurried to the window, and Ryan snatched his phone, heart pounding. They glimpsed flickering lights in the alley, the shapes of figures moving swiftly. A single bark, a sharp, panicked yelp, rang out. Lily's eyes widened in alarm. Someone was out there, possibly near the old trash-strewn lot where she'd first found Rusty. The father swung open the door, hesitant to charge into a trap yet unable to remain idle. Ms. Hawkins, alerted by text, promised she'd call the authorities again. In that fraught instant, Every step they'd taken, every sacrifice and every stand against fear coalesced into one urgent drive to protect Rusty and confront those who believed life was just another commodity to be used or discarded. As the family exchanged grim, determined looks, they sensed the final confrontation had arrived. The climax was at hand, and they would have to face it with the bravery ignited by a little girl's decision to cradle a dying dog in her arms and breathe hope into his weary soul. A hush fell over the alleyway, broken only by the crunch of broken glass underfoot and the ragged breathing of those who had converged there under the cover of darkness. Lily's father, clutching a flashlight and trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve, led the way. Beside him, Ryan brandished his phone, ready to call the police at the slightest provocation. Miss Hawkins lingered a few steps behind, her own phone's camera recording what she could in the dim light. Every nerve on edge, they advanced toward the source of the crash and barking they'd heard moments earlier, the echoes of danger rippling through the narrow, graffiti-strewn corridor. Lily and her mother hung back at the entrance to the alley, hearts pounding. Though the father had insisted Lily remain safely inside, she had refused. "I won't let Rusty face this alone," she'd said, eyes fierce despite her quaking hands. And so they all stood, side by side, a fragile band of protectors in the cold night. From the corner of the building, a shape emerged, one of the suspicious men who'd lurked around before. His silhouette cut a menacing figure against the flickering street lamp. "Stay back," the father warned, voice wavering. His flashlight beam caught the stranger's features for an instant. Cold eyes, a smirk twisting his lips. Another figure followed close behind, carrying what appeared to be a metal pipe. A chill coursed through everyone present. This was no idle threat. They had come to reclaim something they believed was theirs, or to exact punishment if it was not surrendered. Behind them, Rusty cowered at Lily's side, ears flattened against his skull. He recognized the predatory posture of these newcomers, a memory that coursed through him from a life once filled with violence. Lily's heart twisted at the dog's trembling form, tears of anger and empathy welling in her eyes. She stepped forward, voice cracking as she confronted the men. "Leave him alone," she cried, gripping Rusty's collar with small, trembling fingers. "He's not yours to hurt." A dark chuckle escaped one of the men, echoing eerily in the alley. "Foolish little girl," he taunted, stepping closer. "We ain't here for a debate." His gaze flicked over to Lily's father, a sneer curling on his lips. "You should have just handed over the dog. Now we settle this our way." In that fraught moment, Miss Hawkins stepped into the flashlight's beam, capturing the unfolding scene on her phone's camera. The second man, the one wielding the pipe, growled, "Put that down or I smash it." But Miss Hawkins held her ground. "The world will see what you do," she said, her voice quivering yet resolute. "No more shadows for you to hide behind." Suddenly, headlights flooded the alley as Officer Howard's patrol car screeched to a halt at the entrance, alerted by Ryan's frantic text moments earlier. The men hesitated, exchanging panicked glances. For an instant, it seemed they might retreat. But one, driven by either desperation or arrogance, lunged toward Lily, pipe raised. Her mother screamed, and the father flung himself forward, attempting to shield his daughter and Rusty. Chaos exploded in the narrow space. The father collided with the assailant, the pipe clattering against the pavement. Ryan rushed forward, grappling with the second man who snarled like a cornered animal. Miss Hawkins' phone caught every blurred moment. Lily, heart hammering, clutched Rusty, both of them trembling. Over the din of scuffling bodies and shouted threats, the wail of a siren cut through the frigid air. More police units arrived, red and blue lights painting the walls in frantic color. Officer Howard and his partner charged in, ordering everyone to stand down. Within seconds, the men realized they were outnumbered. One attempted to bolt into the darkness, but the police intercepted him. The other, pinned by Lily's father, writhed in fury, spitting curses until handcuffs and the cold muzzle of reality subdued him. "Ms." Hawkins lowered her phone, relief mingling with shock at having witnessed the raw violence. Lily's mother, tears streaming, rushed to wrap her arms around Lily and Rusty, sobbing uncontrollably in the wake of the sudden confrontation. For a few heart-stopping minutes, pandemonium reigned. Police yelled instructions, The suspects cursed and kicked, and neighbors emerged from windows and doorways, drawn by the flashing lights and the clamor. Then, as calm gradually returned, Lily's father, breathing raggedly, helped Lily to her feet. Rusty whined softly, pressing his frail body against the girl's legs, as if to say, "Thank you for standing by me." Officer Howard approached, face grim, but eyes betraying a certain relief. "We'll need statements from all of you," he said gently, noting Lily's tear-streaked cheeks. His gaze lingered on Rusty. "It looks like your dog's story might have a happier ending than these guys intended. We've had tips about a ring involved in dogfighting and illegal breeding. This should help us build a solid case." In a swirl of swirling lights and stunned onlookers, the men in handcuffs were hauled away, their scowling faces forever etched into Lily's memory. In the aftermath, Lily's parents embraced each other, the weight of tension that had gripped them for so long slowly lifting. Ms. Hawkins, camera still rolling, murmured, "The world needs to see this. Not just the cruelty, but the courage you all showed." Lily's father, trembling with an overload of adrenaline, managed a brief nod, tears shining in his eyes. He looked down at Lily, who still clung to Rusty, and gently ruffled her hair. "You saved him," he whispered, voice catching, "and maybe in doing so you saved us too." Lily's mother, leaning on the father for support, gazed at her daughter and the battered dog with awe. It's like a miracle," she breathed. The ordeal had laid bare how fear could corrode even the strongest bonds, but also how love and compassion could defy that fear, forging a resilience none of them had known they possessed. Rusty, once teetering at death's door, was now central to a story of bravery and redemption. Then, in an emotional twist, Officer Howard revealed that these men's arrests might lead to unraveling the entire ring suspected of operating around the city's industrial areas. The father's shoulders sagged in relief. The threat that had stalked their quiet apartment seemed to have lost its most dangerous edge, at least for now. And Lily, tears drying under the glow of the swirling police lights, knelt beside Rusty. Gently, she pressed her forehead against his. Eyes closed. "We did it," she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "You're safe." In that charged moment, the final chord of the confrontation was struck. The intangible menace that loomed had finally been brought into the glaring light of accountability. Though healing would take time, both for Rusty's physical scars and the emotional wounds the family bore, they had stood firm against cruelty. And in the silent bond between a rescued dog and the little girl who refused to let him die, a miracle had indeed happened. They had not only saved each other, but restored a community's faith in compassion's power to overcome despair. In the days following that harrowing confrontation, an uneasy calm settled over Lily's neighborhood. While the police investigated the captured suspects and dug deeper into the illicit dogfighting and breeding ring, Lily's family finally breathed the crisp winter air without the constant grip of fear. They were weary, yet buoyed by a quiet triumph. They had faced the lurking darkness and refused to abandon Rusty to it. The first sign of returning normalcy arrived when the landlord, Mr. Steinberg, who had once threatened them with eviction, knocked hesitantly on their door. His demeanor was noticeably softer, lacking the stern hostility that had previously defined him. "I, read about what happened," he muttered, eyes downcast. "Saw the article in the local paper about how you stood up for that dog and helped the authorities nab some criminals." Lily's father exchanged a glance with her mother, both relieved to sense no trace of accusation in Steinberg's tone. The landlord cleared his throat and added, "Look, I know we've had disagreements, but I just wanted to say I appreciate you keeping our building safe from, well, those people." Then, with a stiff nod and an awkward attempt at a smile, he retreated down the hallway. It wasn't a grand apology, but for Lily's parents, it felt like a fragile olive branch, proof that not everyone found their rescue efforts burdensome. Meanwhile, Rusty himself showed the most marked transformation. No longer cowering at every passing footstep, he ventured around the apartment with ears upright, occasionally curling up beside Lily on the couch, letting out contented sighs as she scratched behind his ears. Though the scars across his side and the thinning fur on his haunches remained physical reminders of past abuse, the light in his eyes hinted at a new peace. He'd had a second chance at life, and each gentle wag of his tail expressed his gratitude. With the immediate danger receding, Dr. Fielding scheduled a final round of essential treatments for Rusty. She commended Lily's family for their perseverance. "I've seen many rescues," she remarked during one exam, running her stethoscope over Rusty's heart. "But rarely do I see such a dramatic turnaround, both for the animal and the people involved. You've done more than just nurse him back to health. You've given him a reason to believe in goodness again." Lily's mother, tears pricking her eyes, admitted that Rusty had similarly restored something in them, a sense of unity that had frayed under financial stress and daily routines. At home, Lily's father finally dismantled the makeshift evidence board they'd assembled in the living room. The menacing notes, photos of the broken window and scraps of data from Rusty's microchip were now collected in a single folder, ready to hand over to the police whenever needed. After gently tucking the folder into a closet, he exhaled, feeling as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his chest, yet he vowed to remain vigilant, acknowledging that healing wasn't a swift process, neither for Rusty's psyche nor for a community plagued by hidden cruelty. Not long after, Mrs. Hawkins published a follow-up piece in the local newspaper. Titled "From the Brink of Despair to a Family's Embrace, Rusty's Tale of Hope," it chronicled the dog's astounding journey from near death in a deserted alley to the final confrontation with those who had once seen him merely as property. The article spurred a wave of support in the neighborhood. Neighbors chipped in to cover some of Rusty's vet costs. Local shops offered free dog supplies, and even the previously distant landlord began bragging to new tenants about the heroic family in 2B. Ironically, the same adversity that had threatened them had also drawn the community closer, igniting conversations about standing against animal cruelty. As winter's chill eased into the first hints of spring, Lily's parents decided it was time to let Rusty experience more than the cramped apartment and the immediate city block. On a bright Saturday, they packed him into the car, no longer fearful of unknown vans, and drove to a nearby park with a broad expanse of grass and winding trails. Lily raced ahead with Rusty on a leash, her laughter echoing as he bounded across the turf, still awkward but undeniably joyful in his newfound freedom. Her parents, watching from a distance, exchanged smiles. In that moment, they saw the tangible proof of their decision to fight for him. A dog once on the verge of giving up, now basking in the simple ecstasy of being alive. Yet the greatest change had taken root within the family themselves. Tensions that once simmered, financial worries, cramped quarters, and daily pressures, had been overshadowed by the act of uniting to protect a life that society had left for dead. Each time Lily's mother made room in the budget for Rusty's food, or her father worked overtime hours to offset vet bills, they reminded themselves that love required sacrifice. And each time they glanced at Lily reading a bedtime story to Rusty, they remembered that kindness could yield miracles no amount of money could buy. If you've been moved by Lily's unwavering compassion and Rusty's remarkable turnaround, please join us in spreading the message that every life deserves a fighting chance. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds between people and animals. Like and share this video to raise awareness about the power of compassion, and leave a comment with your own experiences or tips on helping rescued animals find safe, loving homes. Let's keep the spirit of Lily's courage and Rusty's survival burning bright. Together, we can spark more miracles in a world that desperately needs them. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay kind, stay compassionate, and remember that the smallest act of care can transform a life on the brink of despair.